Genetically modified organisms, an invention of contention. Time and time again, they are thrown in the international spotlight. In 2015, we saw 500 people marching through Los Angeles, chanting "Hell no GMO" and holding signs like hers. In that same year, we saw 500 people in Burkina Faso protesting GMO cotton, and over 1,000 people marched in Santiago, Chile, commanding Monsanto, a large seed company that creates GMOs, to leave their country and stop planting their modified seeds. And in 2013, hundreds of GMO activists stormed a Filipino field of genetically modified rice, destroying months of growth that scientists were studying. So, what about GMOs have all these people up in arms? The beginning of GMOs shows us an answer: the Flavor Saver tomato, the first commercially available GMO food. The process of creating this tomato was entirely transparent. The scientists clearly labeled the food as a genetically modified product, and until the company was sold and it was taken off shelves, people loved this tomato.
These are the new Calgenes?
Yes, they are.
Great. Okay.
Isn't that wonderful?
So the fact that it's genetically engineered doesn't bother you?
Oh, not a bit.
Are they clearly labeled?
Yes, they are.
It was labeled on the cellophane wrapper on the tomato. It had point-of-purchase brochures explaining how the tomato was genetically engineered.
Monsanto purchased the group and stopped labeling other GMO products they made. This lack of information sharing was the catalyst toward anti-GMO groups.
Consumers often feel uneasy about GMOs, even though scientific studies confirm they're safe. Concerns about long-term health effects and environmental risk leave people wanting to make more transparency. For some, GMOs raise ethical questions about how food is produced. Being able to know what is in our food allows customers to make choices that align with personal values like health, sustainability, or religion. Supporters of GMO labeling say it empowers consumers. If labels were required, people could choose to avoid GMOs based on their own preference or beliefs. Plus, as demand, transparency grows, labeling could increase the market for non-GMO products. It's about giving consumers control over what they eat. On the other hand, opponents argue that labeling could create unnecessary fear. It might suggest GMOs are dangerous, even though there's no evidence to back that up. It could also raise production costs, leading to higher prices without clear education. Labels might mislead people into thinking GMOs are harmful when they're not. Ultimately, the debate comes down to trust and transparency. While some believe labeling gives consumers more control, others worry it could cause confusion and higher costs. It's about finding a balance that allows people to make informed choices without sparking unnecessary fear.
How exactly do GMOs impact human health? Since they are created by combining the genes of different foods, using a gene from an allergen can potentially trigger consumers' allergies. And certain GMOs with antibacterial genes do have the chance of transferring antibiotic resistance to humans. However, both concerns are preventable and very rare. And GMOs can also positively impact human health. Foods like golden rice, which was engineered to have higher levels of vitamin A, can help people with vitamin deficiencies and other concerns. And most of the current concerns about GMOs on health are minor, with little to no evidence to support them. A more evidence-based argument against GMOs is their environmental implications. GMOs increase the risk of outcrossing, meaning the engineered genes can pass on to wild plants, in turn damaging biodiversity by changing genetic makeups. However, GMOs also have many pros for the environment, such as being easier to transport, less prone to disease, and more versatile. Furthermore, foods designed to be insect-resistant allow farmers to use less insecticides. In fact, according to the FDA, insecticide application among U.S. corn and cotton farmers decreased by over 80% from 1996 to 2017. Evidently, GMOs have the potential to develop and improve sustainable agriculture, but compelling arguments exist for both the potential damage and advantages of GMOs on the environment.
In addition to the debate over the environment, the GMO controversy extends to how farmers themselves are impacted. For farmers who choose not to use GMO products, they may find it harder to find products that they can use. In the 1980s, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Supreme Court also ruled in Diamond v. Chakrabarty that genetic modified seeds could be patented. A patent is basically a legal right that doesn't allow others to use a product or an invention. The Supreme Court also ruled something similar in 2001 that patents rights could go as far as prohibiting the use of plants in their new different variations. With these decisions, we can see how seeds are less available for farmers who do not want to use genetic modifications, but also don't want to use products that have patents on them. While consumers may see positives, such as more food and lower costs when using GMOs, according to Botanica, farmers may not see that. For farmers who choose to use GMOs, they do see an increase in the prices over the years. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in 2012, there was over a 600% increase in the comparison of prices in the 1990s. With companies like Corteva Agri-Science, according to Friends of the Earth Europe, they give fees to farmers because they have a patent on the crops and variations. Even with plants that show a natural genetic trait that may or may not be similar to their own invention, they add these fees. With these points put together, it can make us question whether GMOs are really beneficial to farmers. With patents being on about 40% of crops overall, farmers have to decide whether they want to have genetically modified crops, and if they do, how will they be able to afford it? This brings us to our framed questions of how do GMOs impact farmers in our economy? Are GMOs the key to sustainable agriculture, or do they create more harm than good? And how do we weigh the costs and benefits of GMOs on the environment?
Alongside their effects on farmers, the economic implications of GMOs reveal more complexities to the controversy, with one positive impact being that GMOs enable farmers to produce higher yields even under challenging conditions like droughts or pest outbreaks. In fact, genetically modified crops contributed to a 22% increase in global yields since their introduction. Furthermore, GMOs lower input costs for farmers by reducing their reliance on pesticides. For instance, herbicide-tolerant soybeans reduce the need for multiple pesticides, saving labor and resources. And lower production costs often translate to more affordable food prices, benefiting consumers. But despite these benefits, GMOs do have economic drawbacks. Countries with strict GMO regulations or bans, like in the European Union, create trade challenges for GMO exporting countries like the US. And restrictions have resulted in billions of dollars in lost revenue for US agricultural exports. While GMOs drive innovation and economic efficiency, they also raise pressing concerns about trade restrictions and economic inequality for farmers. Alongside the previously stated concerns about GMOs, how do these arguments affect how they're regulated in the U.S.?
In the United States, GMOs are governed by the Coordinated Framework for Regulation of Biotechnology, which was published in 1986 and builds on legal authority that had previously been in place to regulate traditional goods. This system focuses on the characteristics of the products rather than the manufacturing process. The type of GMO involved determines the sort of regulation. The degree of restrictions on GMO released into the environment varies depending on the specific GMOs in question, because U.S. regulation of GMOs focuses on the product's characteristics rather than the production process. There are no absolute restrictions on GMOs in the United States food supply. The majority of foods derived from GM plants are categorized as presumptively, generally recognized as safe, since the FDA treats them similar to foods obtained from traditionally grown plants. However, pre-market approval is necessary for a GMO product that differs significantly in structure, function, or composition from substances found currently in food. The debate over GMOs is still complicated as well as controversial, with its origin and worries about the corporate control over agriculture, environmental effects, and human health. GMO supporters emphasize the thorough safety assessments carried out by scientific organizations in their argument that GMOs provide answers to global issues, including food insecurity, crop resilience, and sustainability. However, detractors have legitimate worries about the ethical ramifications of patenting living things, ecological hazards including biodiversity loss, and possible long-term health impacts. The argument reveals underlying social concerns about transparency, power dynamics in the food system, and consumer choice, even though scientific argument largely supports the safety of approved GMOs. Strong regulation, constant discussion, and a dedication to striking a balance between innovation and caution are all necessary to address these issues.